Hey, NiSi, I really like your variable ND filters, but I did notice a bit of a color shift. Really? Yeah, it's not bad, but it's just something that I wanted to make you aware of, and then maybe you want to fix it. Oh, wow. Okay. Variable NDs are a bit of a blessing and a curse. While you're able to very quickly and easily adjust the level of ND and not have to deal with a filter swap or a matte box, you're also susceptible to some of the negative effects like potential color cast and other artifacting in your image. And the severity of these effects usually directly correlates to the cost and therefore the quality of the filter that you're using. Not long ago, I took a look at the NiSi ND-VARIO Pro Nano Variable ND filters. For a price tag of only $100 to $200 depending on the filter size, these filters impressed me with their quality for the cost. Now, keep in mind that nothing is absolutely perfect, and I did have a few negatives about those filters that I mentioned in that video if you want to check it out. One of those negatives was a bit of a color shift that I noticed, and I definitely made sure to share my results with NiSi to make them aware of that. Fast forward a few months, and now NiSi claims to have corrected that color shift issue with their brand new True Color ND-VARIO Pro Nano filter. They gotta work on that name. So before we go ahead and put NiSi's True Color claims to the test, it's disclaimer time. Now, NiSi did send me this filter for review, and I am a NiSi reseller through my website. However, I used NiSi filters long before they ever reached out to me for a collaboration, so I feel comfortable reviewing their products and sharing my test results with you. That being said, nobody at NiSi is previewing or steering the content of this video, and as always, I can say whatever I want. Don't try messing with me. I can taste the difference between light ranch and regular. So the True Color ND, which is what I'm going to call it from now on because there's no way I'm saying that huge long name every time, is very similar physically to their previous ND-VARIO filters with a couple of changes. Both consist of two pieces of glass that rotate to affect the amount of visible light they allow to pass through. The original came in a strength of 1.5 to 5 stops, while the True Color ranges from 1 to 5 stops. Both have this little pin to make adjustments easier, but the True Color has made this pin removable if you wish. The True Color also has this silver ring with grips on it to make it much easier to thread the filter onto and off of your lenses. Both versions have hard stops marked with minimum and maximum to prevent over-rotation and causing the dreaded X effect to occur. Neither of these filters have that issue. The original had a series of dots between minimum and maximum that did not actually correlate to any exact stop measurement, but the True Color has stop ratings from 1 to 5 to let you know exactly how much light is being reduced. We'll take a look at the accuracy of those markings a little later. The True Color also comes in this nice little case as opposed to just a plastic box like the old version, and it even comes with a lens cap. The lens cap is a nice addition as you're unable to use your lens's native cap when larger filters are attached to the front of it. I will admit, the first thing that I did within minutes of receiving this filter was I took the lens cap and used an X-Acto knife to cut a small notch out of the side so that I can use it and permanently keep the rotation pin installed and not have to take it on and off. It's a simple, small little thing, but it really makes life a lot easier. So physical improvements are nice and all, but we're here to see how true this True Color filter really is. So of course, I went ahead and ran a couple of tests. There were two primary things I really wanted to look for. One, of course, was comparing the quality of the filter at various stop ratings to an image shot with no filter at all to check their color accuracy. And then I also wanted to test how accurate those marked stop markings are along the side of the lens. So I threaded the filter onto my DZO Pictor 20-55 zoom lens, attached it to my red Komodo, and shot a bunch of tests outside in direct sunlight. For the no filter test here, I was still overexposed with my lens maxed out at T22, so I actually had to adjust the ISO to compensate. Admittedly, after seeing the results of these tests, I wasn't immediately blown away. It looked to me like something was a little bit off, so I decided to try something a little different. Now, this filter does not by any means claim to be an IR-ND filter, or one capable of blocking infrared light from reaching the sensor. But I went ahead and did an IR test anyway. I shot a black shirt outside in the sun with no filter, the ND set to 1 stop, and then the ND set to 5 stops. Wow, what is going on here? How is the IR pollution so bad, and why is it worse with 5 stops of ND than it is with no filter at all? Let me explain. So while most cameras these days have built-in IR filters in front of their sensors to block infrared light, more and more cinema cameras these days are choosing to forego those filters in order to preserve image clarity and sharpness. That makes these cameras susceptible to IR pollution if you don't add some layer of IR filtration in front of your lens. So these types of cameras include Blackmagic cameras like I'm shooting on right now, and various other cinema cameras, including, you guessed it, the red Komodo that I tested on. So the results in this test actually make perfect sense. With no filter attached, there's IR light hitting the sensor, but there's also a ton of visible light that the camera can process and provide fairly accurate color. But when the filter is increased to 5 stops, we've greatly reduced the amount of visible light, but the IR light is passing through with no problem. The IR light has overwhelmed the sensor and is causing this reddish tint in the black fabric. Again, this is not due to any failure with the NiSi filter itself. Instead, this is something that I want you to be aware of if you're someone like me shooting on these types of cinema cameras that don't have any built-in IR filtration. You're going to want to get something like an IR cut filter and attach that to your lens in front of the True Color to block that IR light. So I felt those first tests I did, while useful and informative, didn't really give us an accurate representation of the color accuracy of the filter itself. So I decided to simulate as if you were using a camera that does have an IR filter by shooting a series of tests here in my studio and using the powerful Aperture 300D Mark II to light my color chart bright enough to replicate direct sun exposure, but without all of that IR pollution that comes from actual sunlight. While you normally won't be needing or using an ND filter indoors for the most part, I felt that these tests gave us a much more clinical evaluation of the performance of the filter. And I'm impressed. The colors appear to remain accurate throughout the range when compared to the shot done with no filter used. But this got me curious. I wonder what would happen if I tested the original Vario ND in this setting. Since the original doesn't have exact stop markings, I simply tested it at its minimum and maximum settings. And wow, is there a big color difference. The original actually seems to have quite a green cast to it. The True Color is the clear winner when compared to the shot with no filter. Now, you may have noticed there that I did have to make some exposure adjustments to some of the shots in post in order to keep the exposure level constant throughout the range. I did indicate on each of those shots how much exposure adjustment I had to do. One stop needed to be increased by 0.75 stops. 2 stops needed no adjustment. 3 stops needed a decrease of 0.25 stops. 4 stops needed an increase of only 0.15 stops. And 5 stops needed an increase of 0.25 stops. So that means these stop markings on the True Color are close, but not precise. And of course, this is going to vary depending on what lens you're using as well and how accurate that is. But I don't really see this as a problem. This is a variable ND, so you're going to be making micro adjustments until you get your exposure correct and not adhering to strict one-stop increments. In fact, the inclusion of these stop markings is great for reference, giving you a general idea of how much light you're removing, and also makes repeatability very easy, as if you shot one shot at 3, your next shot, shoot at 3, they should match. So I put a lot of information on the screen with each of my test shots there, and instead of making you guys go back and pause the video to take everything in, what I've done is I have made screenshots of all of the tests that I shot available for download in a link down in the description. That way, at your own time and own pace, you can go through and do some comparisons of your own. So while you can decide what you think of the True Color filter from those screenshots, what do I think? Well, I think that there is a noticeable color improvement in the True Color over the previous generation of variable NDs. I also think that coming in at $120 to $250, depending on thread size, this is an impressive filter for the price. Obviously, we did run into a few caveats. One being that if you're someone like me shooting on cinema cameras that lack internal infrared filtration, you're going to want to find a solution for that. Otherwise, this filter is going to let that infrared light through. And if you're shooting outdoors, where you usually are using an ND filter, you're going to get some of that reddish tint. Now, is it possible for NiSi to add some kind of IR cut to this filter in the future? Maybe. And you better believe I'm going to be talking with them about that. Another note is that this filter only comes in a 1 to 5 stop version, while the previous generation had an additional 5 to 9 stop version in its lineup. All I can say right now is that NiSi has a cool solution for 5 to 9 stops of variable ND in the works, and that's all I can tell you. And if you want to be the first to know when that mystery is revealed, the best way not to miss it is to make sure you are subscribed to this channel and have that notification bell on. And while you're down there, check out that description because I've got affiliate links to all of the filters that I mentioned, as well as a link to my NiSi store on my website. Hope you guys enjoyed this video review and these tests. I'll see you guys in the next one. True Color ND-VARIO Pro Nano. Holy